You're listening to the Anthem Award-winning podcast from Rutgers Law School, The Power of Attorney. I'm your host and Dean of the Law School, Joanna Bond. I am joined today by our SBA Presidents, that's the Student Bar Association Presidents, in both Camden and Newark. Their names are Emma Roth and Dan Altomare. Thank you so much, Emma and Dan, for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
So I want to talk a little bit about your story. Can you both take a few minutes and tell me what your origin story is?
Absolutely. Do you want to start, Dan?
Sure, I can start. I think I'm older, so I can go first. So I'm actually originally from San Diego, and I grew up there and lived there for my first 18 years of life. Then I went to the University of Arizona, and lived there in Tucson for 5 years, because I'm a scholar. And then I got an offer at the end of my time there to work for Geico, and I got cold feet. And in my last 6 months of school, I got a teaching certificate instead and bought a plane ticket and moved to China, where I lived for 5 years. And then a little bit of time after that, I applied to law school, and here I am happily at Rutgers Law.
That's fantastic. Okay, so I have to ask, are you fluent in Mandarin?
Yes, I speak Chinese. It's gotten worse these past 3 years as I've only found time for law, but yes, I do.
That's great. That's fantastic. Okay, Emma.
Mine is a lot less interesting than that.
Oh, I doubt it.
I grew up in South Jersey, in Cherry Hill, and I left Cherry Hill when I graduated high school and went to Maryland at Towson University, where I studied business administration with a concentration in legal studies. And I loved Towson. I had an amazing experience. Um, and I knew when I was in college and even in high school that I wanted to pursue law school. So it was kind of a straight jump for me. I was worried that if I took a break, I would never go back. So I decided to just go straight through. And it's great. I love being back in Jersey, and I'm really excited to be finishing up law school.
That is fantastic. So let me just ask, Emma, when you think back to your high school self, what was it about the law back then that interested you?
I've always had a very strong pull towards advocacy. I always found myself being the one to, speak up about an injustice or speak my mind about um, any policy issues going on at my high school, and just trying to be a voice, and let my voice be heard. And I think that that was very appealing in terms of law school, because it's full of very like-minded individuals.
Right, right. Well, that's great. Thank you. Okay. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, what brought you to law school, Dean Bond, if that's all right?
Oh, yeah. Happy to answer that. I grew up sort of rooting for the underdog, and so I was always uh, advocating for, like Emma, advocating for others, and really it was in college when I took a class on civil rights law that I realized how useful the law can be in terms of shaping society and creating legal norms. And so I realized that the law was a really powerful tool to create a just society. And so that's really what drove me to law school. And I was very interested in women's rights and civil rights. And I looked around for law schools that had people who were teaching feminist legal theory, and that's really one of the things that drove me to law school. And I had an interest all through law school in doing women's rights work, and eventually that shifted from domestic women's rights work to international women's rights work. But that's what I found most motivating was the idea that law could be a really helpful vehicle for social change.
I have a follow-up to that, if that's all right, Dean Bond. It's
Yeah.
about your favorite classes. Did you have any international law classes when you were in law school, or did you have a completely different favorite class?
Well, I didn't actually take international human rights law in law school, but I took a lot of classes that anything I could find really in gender and law, and my my one of my favorite classes was a jurisprudence class actually that was taught by a professor named John Powell, who was really my first introduction to critical race theory, and he was such an inspiration that I pretty much signed up for every class he was teaching, and it was really a phenomenal experience.
I have a
So let me.
question.
Oh, okay, go
Oh,
ahead,
sorry.
Emma.
Go ahead. I have a question for Dean Bond and Dan. Um, Looking back, what would you tell your first year self about surviving in law school
That is
and
such a good
thriving and
question.
thriving?
Yeah, that's a great question. I I think I would. I think I would reassure myself that this was something I could do. I started in my first year with a lot of self-doubt, and I think by my second year in law school, I had figured out that this was something that I really wanted to do, and it was an environment in which I could thrive. But I think I would tell my first year self not to sweat the small stuff so much, and have the confidence to know that I can really thrive in this arena. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, that is a tough one. I think I got really good advice right before I mean, I don't know about you too. I got so much advice about law school, like from everyone. Everyone had an opinion, even though very few of them had actually gone to law school. But I did, one of the few lawyers I knew before I came to law school did give me good advice. And he said, don't do anything special to prepare for law school. And in fact, relax and like go to the beach and read a non-law book. And I definitely think that is good advice. And I did do that to an extent, but I wish I had leaned into relaxing more, because law school, at least for me, has been like a marathon. And then in 1L themselves, like I had, to be like completely frank, I had like extreme anxiety in between fall and spring, waiting for my grades to come back. I don't think I was alone there. I to the point where I had like physical stomach pains at one point. And it was fine. Like, I don't have straight A's, but I have pretty good grades and it's fine. Like um yeah, it's like it's not that big a deal unless you really bombed all your tests, in which case you probably had an idea that you bombed your tests. I think in general you're going to be all right, and that's what I would tell myself.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's good advice. Okay, so let me ask you two. What do you find most exciting about the law? What are there specific areas in the law that really excite you?
I really enjoy criminal law, and it's not something that I thought I would enjoy when I was entering law school. I kind of went in thinking that I was going to be interested in more transactional work, but I really did take an interest in criminal law. And I think another area of law that really is exciting to me, but I don't know if I'll ever venture into, is medical malpractice.
Mhm.
I think that's so fascinating, and I would be interested in taking classes on it because I think that it's so relevant, especially with new technology in medicine. So yeah, I find those areas really, really interesting.
That's great. Did you enjoy first year torts?
I did. I love torts. I'm actually taking advanced torts right now.
Oh, you are.
And yeah, and it's great. I advanced torts is a little bit different because it's more conversational, less lectury,
Hmm.
and we really dive into all of the complex issues in the tort system, and it's really fascinating.
That is interesting. Are you talking about medical malpractice in the advanced torts class?
We are a bit. Professor Scales, he gives a lot of examples on medical malpractice, and so it really ties everything in together for me. And so I feel like I'm getting a little bit of the medical malpractice knowledge, but also still really learning about the nuances of torts.
Great. That's great. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, like Emma, I also thought I wanted to do transactional law, and it was kind of confirmed in my 1L year. Like contracts was the only class I really ended up really like quote unquote getting in my 1L year. And it was by far my best grade in all of 1L. And towards the end of being my worst in the fall, they're both fine, but like relatively speaking. Um, but since then, I'm pretty convinced I'm going to be a trial attorney and probably practicing civil litigation. So torts. I'm also an advanced torts, taught by my 1L torts professor, Professor Swan, and she's excellent. And then I'm also very interested in international law. So I try and take anything I can torts related, international law related, and environmental law related.
Great. Those are all great areas. Fantastic. And let's see, what has been the most important thing that you learned at Rutgers so far?
Um, I can try and answer that. That's tough. I've learned because I've learned so many things at Rutgers. There are so like honestly like every kind of experience related to the law can be found at Rutgers. And I came into law school knowing nothing about the law. I didn't think I would ever study law until right before I decided I would. So everything has been new, but if I had to pick one thing, maybe it would be the cliche thing, but the thinking like a lawyer, because that kind of permeates everything. But um, truly critical analysis and then being able to communicate that in detail, um, with my oral advocacy, but even more importantly, what really developed is my writing skills. That has probably got to be what I learned the most in law school. And obviously, I am going to practice law, I hope. But I think it is kind of a transferable skill. I realized I always thought of myself as a critical thinker, but before coming to law school, before coming to Rutgers, I realized that there's like a whole nother level of critical thinking and really detailed analysis that you get taught how to do here.
Absolutely. And your writing skills and your oral advocacy skills, those really are transferable skills and you're going to use them no matter what. Even if you decided tomorrow that you didn't want to practice law, that writing ability, the fact that you have honed that at law school is going to be very helpful no matter what you end up doing. So I think that that's really an invaluable skill that we teach. How about you, Emma?
For me, I think the most important thing that I've learned at Rutgers is how to be a zealous advocate. I think that Rutgers specifically takes a lot of time and effort to teach methods and strategy and techniques that will serve you regardless if you're going to be a litigator or not. And that's why trial advocacy was my favorite class by far in law school because it was an opportunity to test things out without the risk of an actual client facing any backlash. So it was really an amazing opportunity for me to learn not only the skills, but also how to incorporate the knowledge into that, like rules of evidence and um, everything like that. It was a really eye-opening experience for me. And I think it's easily one of the most important things I've learned.
That's wonderful. I completely agree. I mean, I think a lot of people come to law school because they envision themselves in a courtroom and we provide those opportunities to really step into the shoes of a lawyer and try it out, whether it's a trial ad or in a clinic or an externship. Those are fantastic opportunities. And I always encourage students to take advantage of those experiential opportunities where you really can, as you put it, test things out and see for yourself what you enjoy, what you're good at, what you need more work on. It's such a great opportunity in law school. So kudos to you for taking advantage of that.
I have a question for you, Dean Bond. How about the most rewarding aspect of your role as a dean? Is it fair to say that there are things to be learned as dean, or is this like a perfect or has the learning stopped?
The learning has definitely not stopped. I will say that. There are a lot of things I love about my job, and one of them is interacting with students like you guys. I mean, I get to do that fairly regularly at events and meetings and things like that. But because my role is fairly all consuming, I'm not in the classroom this year, and so I miss that kind of day-to-day contact with students, but I love getting to know you all as students in the kind of co-curricular spaces where I interact with students. And then the other thing I say all the time, and it's truly genuine, is I love interacting with our alumni too. Rutgers Law School has phenomenal alums, and they care deeply about the institution. They care about the students. They ask me all the time, what are students concerned about? What's on the minds of students? And they really want to give back. And so a lot of them do that through mentoring programs, sometimes through adjunct teaching at the law school, sometimes through financial contributions and scholarships. But there's really a great energy that comes from our alumni community. And so I love every chance I get to interact with the alums. It's really just a fantastic group of folks. So those are two of my favorite parts of the job.
That's awesome. I have a question. So, from what I understand about this podcast, the majority of the listeners are prospective students thinking about going to law school. So, in that sense, what would you tell them were your go-to methods of self-care to get you through law school?
Ah, that's such a great question. I'm a huge proponent of self-care, and we talk a lot about what students need in terms of mental health and work-life balance. I think students nowadays are much more attuned to those issues than when I was in school. But I think I sort of knew intuitively that I needed that. And so I'll tell you what I did during my first year of law school, which is not the solution for everybody, I'm sure. But I got a puppy and I loved it. It was fantastic. So I went to the pound, I adopted a puppy, and she was really a fantastic reminder that I couldn't be consumed by law school, that I had responsibilities to take care of her and take her for walks, and so it got me out of the library on a regular basis, and it was just a really really nice thing to have a companion to go through law school with. So uh, I think that just paying attention to what your needs are outside of law school, whether it's a dog or the surrounding yourself with peers that you can count on and rely on when you're having a bad day or when you're celebrating your successes. It's just really important to have people in your life and in your community who you can depend on. So in my case, I had that, but I also had a dog in my life that was a wonderful companion. So I do recommend that, but I realize it's not for everyone.
Yeah, I feel very strongly about that, in the same sense that it's really important to have a strong support system. I spoke about this to the incoming 1Ls during their orientation, that I heard a lot of advice before law school, like you were saying, Dan, about, oh, you're going to be like in the library nonstop. You're not going to see your friends for 3 years. And I really found myself leaning on my friends and my support system. And I thought I was going to be completely isolated, but it turns out like I really needed them. And it was really nice to not shut them out. And I urged the 1Ls at the time to hold on to their friendships and put work into them, even though you have a lot going on. It's important.
Absolutely. That's great advice. I'm so glad you're communicating that to our prospective students. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that too. I do wish I could fit a puppy in my dorm room, but I definitely have been also leaning on as many supports as possible. I think that is really good advice. I have another question. Dean Bob, what is the biggest challenge facing law schools now? And if I may, like, because we are in this climate, I think it can't be glossed over of swift and kind of shocking changes sometimes with the new administration. So has that affected law schools from your perspective?
Absolutely. I mean, in dramatic ways. And if you had asked me that question a few months ago, the answer probably would have been different. There were challenges then too, but they were different challenges. And now trying to figure out what the path forward looks like is a challenge, and it's unfolding daily, as you know. So, there are more policy initiatives and executive orders coming out of the White House that affect higher ed. Uh, and that is against a backdrop of, I think, what is unfortunately some widespread skepticism about higher education and the utility of it. And so that makes me sad, just because I've always been a proponent of the power of higher education, to to be a real source of mobility, social mobility. And so I think that the fact that there is this, in my view, unwarranted skepticism about the power of higher education is really kind of a sad statement about where things are. But then that's the backdrop, and then you have these more acute issues that are sort of coming to us on a daily basis, and that involves some restrictions on funding, federal funding for certain projects and things like that. But also, things as mundane as the NIH cap on F&A, which is sort of the overhead expenses that a lot of schools, not just law schools, but in a lot of cases, med schools who are getting grants from NIH, they have a certain percentage of those grants that go towards overhead expenses, and NIH has now capped those at 15%. So that's a really dramatic funding cut for a huge range of universities. And we're going to, even though we as the law school don't have NIH grants per se, we're still going to feel the trickle down effects of that. So it's a very dynamic landscape right now, as I know but that absolutely has to be the biggest challenge that we're facing today.
And I know you mentioned it's dynamic. Is there any, like, standing here now in the middle of the storm, so to speak, is there any way that we can incorporate this into actionable advice, or is it kind of an impractical thing to think about for prospective students, especially sometimes the law school process is like a 2-year process or a whole year in advance process. Well, is there any kind of advice you could give like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, uh, one thing that's important to keep in mind is that we've been through challenging policy environments before. We will survive. We will fight the good fight and come out the other side. But I would encourage you to think about law school. It's a really great way to influence national policy, to sort of have a say in the direction of this country. And even at the state and local level, we need good lawyers everywhere. So now is actually a great time to go to law school, I think. If you share the sense that law can be a powerful tool, and a powerful influence on society. So I would end with that hopeful note.
So, on that note, what are the strengths of Rutgers law specifically that people might not know about?
Well, there are a lot. I mean, I can talk a little bit about the kinds of things that drew me to Rutgers Law School. I'm still a relatively new dean. I came here about 18 months ago, and one of the things that attracted me was Rutgers' longstanding investment in um, fostering a rich diversity of students. And so, Rutgers has a high number of first gen students. It has a really high rate percentage of diverse students in its student body. On the Newark campus, this year is the first year that we are a majority minority campus. And it's that kind of investment in diversity that I really value. And the minority student program has been in existence now over 50 years in Newark and since 2016 in Camden. And that is a hallmark program of the law school. And it's one that I think should be a national model. It's a program in which, we have intentionally developed pipelines for students from communities that are underrepresented in the law. And we have not only established these pipelines to get students to come to law school, but then we've designed an entire program around supporting those students once they get here. So the MSP program, or our minority student program, on both campuses is open to everyone. It's a post-admissions program that's open to all, but it really does create an intentional community to foster a sense of belonging in all of our students. And the early investment in this program is something that I was so impressed with when I was looking around at law schools. And I continue to be impressed with that program day in and day out. It's really just a phenomenal program. So that's one of the things that is certainly a strength of Rutgers Law School that some people may know about, others may not. And then I have to give a shout out to our faculty too. We have an extraordinary faculty here at Rutgers Law School. Our I knew that coming in, but it's been underscored over and over again for me since I've been here, and it's really extraordinary to me. Our faculty are really thought leaders in their area of expertise. And so they're engaged not just in writing really engaging law review articles, they're also engaged in testifying before Congress about various issues and within their areas of expertise and writing amicus briefs to the courts. And so it's not as though they're just producing scholarship that other scholars will read. They're very engaged in kind of pushing the envelope as far as policy, as far as law and policy goes. So really an incredible faculty, and they're so talented in the classroom. I hope that you all have had that experience. I continue to be so impressed with our faculty. So I think it's really an extraordinary place to get an education and to find community.
Yeah, I really agree. Our faculty are excellent, and I do regret all the time that I didn't join MSP. I think it's a incredible program.
It really is. Okay, let me ask you a question. Let's see. How do you, um, well, let me ask you about your SBA experience. You both have experience now as Student Bar Association presidents and in other student organizations too. How do you think those and other extracurricular activities have shaped your law school experience?
Yeah, I could start. I think it has had a really big impact on my experience. I've been part of the SBA for 3 years now. So I started as a 1L rep, and then for 2L, I was the vice president, and now I'm the president. And it has given me an opportunity not only to meet more students and to become more engaged with the student body, but to truly leave a legacy and make change. And I think that's been really exciting, to not feel like a cog in the wheel, so to say, and to feel like I can really make an impact. And that's the same with other student organizations and even being on a journal. I feel like the work that I'm doing is meaningful. It's going to be read. It's going to be heard. And so I think it's made going to law school feel a little bit more fulfilling.
That's wonderful. That's so great to hear. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, I do want to echo what Emma said about how it's fulfilling and well, yeah, a lot. It's being a member of SBA has been a huge part of my life here as a 3L. This is also my third consecutive year in the Student Bar Association, and I was pretty involved in other organizations before this. I think in addition to what Emma mentioned, probably the biggest thing it's done is it really has connected me with all sorts of groups. Not just like I feel like I know this isn't true, but I feel like I've met every student on the Newark campus. Emma and I got to meet in person recently. I engage with the Alumni Association board frequently. I've engaged with almost every dean. I have met the chancellor. And I just you get your hands and fingers on the complete like pulse of the student body and everything that's going on. And I feel like in addition to real advocacy skills which I've developed, like there's been real I think there's a difference between like knowing and practice, right? Or knowing and experience. And sometimes it's the little things, like just literally procedure of how to do things, how to craft a message, how to find a tone, how to organize people. Um, and all of that, in addition to, I think probably the biggest thing would be just all the opportunities it's opened up for me personally, and hopefully, I know I've made an effort, but I don't know how it's paid off, but hopefully connecting those opportunities with as many students as possible, because there is so much here at Rutgers Law, truly, truly, and the more we can connect each other to all these opportunities, the greater experience we can all have.
That's great. Well said. And so I know you both have been very involved in the SBA. Are you going to miss it when you graduate, or are you ready to sort of pass the torch?
I think I'm
Be honest, Emma.
definitely I think I'm definitely ready to pass the torch. I know that there are so many other people who are so ready to take on this role and are so passionate. Um, but I haven't really enjoyed my time, but I think I will look back very fondly of it. But I am looking forward to seeing my my work kind of come to fruition. Because sometimes when you make when you propose change, you won't get to see it. It's like planting seeds in a garden you'll never get to see. And so I'm actually really excited to pass the torch along and see what else is capable, who else is capable, and what. So, and then hopefully looking back as an alumni and seeing all the change that has been made and getting to admire that from a distance.
That's great. That's great. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, again, I really agree with Emma. I had a moment during winter break where I was like, I'm ready to be a lame duck president. I haven't figured out how to do that exactly. I'm still very engaged, but I one of the first things I did this semester was set the election schedule. And there are definitely a lot of so many excellent student leaders here waiting in the wings, chomping at the bit, and I cannot wait to help them get in the position. But in addition to what Emma just said, I also want to say leadership, true leadership, like the kind that Emma represents, and especially that you represent, Dean Bond, is difficult. And I just want to say, having worked with you off and on, like obviously you have much, much bigger responsibilities, two campuses, but I really respect the work you've done, and I think you've done an excellent job. And it is difficult. It's difficult to manage so many groups of constituents. It's one of the things I learned, and one of the things I will love and look back fondly on, and I'm ready to look back on.
Right. I can appreciate that completely. Well, and likewise, Dan, it has been such a pleasure to work with you and Emma. You both have been really extraordinary leaders of both campuses. And so I will be sorry to see you go, but I look forward to seeing who comes next too, and to see the great work that they will do. But you're leaving big shoes to fill, both of you.
Thank you.
So let me ask you this. What are I mean, we're sort of talking about the future anyway, but can you tell me a little bit about what your plans are after law school?
Dan, do you want to start?
Oh, sure, yeah. Immediately afterwards, I will be clerking in state court, family court. And then the long-term view, I hope to practice some kind of environmental law. I don't know if that will be domestic or international or both. Who knows what the future holds, but I will be clerking immediately after law school.
Great. That's wonderful. And which judge are you clerking with?
Judge Damian Santamuro here in Essex County.
Fantastic. Great. That will be a wonderful learning experience. I am certain. I whenever I get the chance talking to students, I really encourage them to do clerkships. I think it's such an extraordinary learning opportunity, and you spend a lot of time with a judge in court who often teaches you a tremendous amount about what is effective advocacy and what isn't. So it's a wonderful, wonderful way to spend a year or two after law school. That's great. How about you, Emma?
I am fortunate enough to have a job after graduation, and I will be working for the Delaware Department of Justice as a Deputy Attorney General.
Oh,
And I
great.
am extremely excited for this opportunity. I interned with them in this past summer, and it really it was the first time I felt like it really fit and that I was doing exactly what I was put on this earth to do. And I am very much looking forward to finishing up bar prep at the end of the summer and getting right into work.
Great. That's wonderful. How lucky to have that feeling that is such a good fit for you personally. That's wonderful. I wish you both the best, and I will keep an eye on you, I'm sure, with all the great things that you're doing, and I hope that you will stay in touch with us at Rutgers. I mean, one of the things, as I said earlier, one of the things that I really value about this place is our thriving Rutgers alumni community. So I know that you two will be active participants within the alumni community, but don't be strangers. Come back and see us on campus whenever you can. I always love to reconnect with students who've moved on. So, but I want to also take a moment to just say thank you for all of your service to the law school and for being here today to talk to me about your experiences and your future plans. It's wonderful to hear. Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
The Power of Attorney is a production of Rutgers Law School. With 2 locations just minutes from New York City and Philadelphia, Rutgers Law offers the prestige and reputation of a large, nationally known university with a personal, small campus experience. Learn more today by visiting us at law.rutgers.edu.